can also commit injustice by doing nothing. Marcus Aurelius. Alrighty then. Hello, Happy New Year's, and welcome back to another episode of the Full Metal Cast. I apologize as there is no video for this episode, and actually I'm doing it at my 9 to 5 in the privacy of a conference room I was able to book here during my lunch break. So if you hear some footsteps or people walking by, that's why. But I assure you, I am not going to give anything away. With where I'm at, I'm talking to myself into a phone. But it's a new year, 2024. Not sure if the earthquake that took place in Japan is an omen for maybe what's to come, along maybe with all of those underground bunkers the elite have been building underneath their mansions. But as with every new year, you hear a lot of talk about resolutions, a lot of empty promises that are about as binding and as absolute as horoscopes. They're absolute horseshit. If it took you a full rotation around the sun to say you're going to start eating healthy or going to the gym or changing parts of your life, you're not. You may do it for a week or 2 weeks even, but chances of you actually adopting that habit year-round and for the foreseeable future are no. So you're either a disciplined person or you are not. That being said, though, I am looking forward to a few things this year. One thing is being more disciplined in getting out, meeting more people, like-minded individuals, adding more people sort of to the group chat that we're communicating with, getting out, shooting, training, learning, just building community more. In that sort of vein, Pew Peeps is coming up in April of this year in Texas. Very much looking forward to that. Again, it's going to be the first sort of show that I'm actually going to be visiting and I'm actually going to be a part of. I'll have a table there, not really sure how it's going to be laid out yet, but I am on the list as one of the vendors/creators. They'll be there, so I will have things for sale, new designs, patches, shirts, humidors obviously, meeting and greeting. I'm really excited to sort of get around, walk around, meet other creators, vendors, and just people frequenting the show as well. So hopefully I can come out of there with some decent content or some good news to report. For those who don't know, Pew Peeps sort of is being hosted and set up by Pageosity, a frequent flyer on the Art and War podcast. Very talented artist who kind of found her way, dabbling and dipping her toes into the gun community, very active in the gun community. I think she's participated in Finnish brutality several times now, known for her tiger sort of onesie. Check her out though. Very much a proponent of 2A, of free speech. And this is sort of the anti-shot show, if you will, in the sense that she started seeing some of the smaller guys and 3D printed creators getting the boot or having SHOT Show sort of stick their nose up to these people, because if you're small, getting in at SHOT Show, the financial hurdle's rather large, even though I have heard security is kind of a joke, so sneaking in, ironically enough, to SHOT Show isn't too much of an ordeal. But this year, they sort of turned away or said they are not going to allow 3D printed content creators and manufacturers. I think they may have changed their stance a little bit, but they still don't like 3D printed gun stuff, which is how ironic. Your SHOT Show, I don't know why you would turn your eye to that, but they want nothing to do with it. So this sort of popped up, and this is supposed to be an open to all, free speech, celebration of the gun community. So I have no doubt it's going to be quite the diverse, crowd of individuals. And again, very much looking forward to seeing, what it's like going to one of these shows, and also seeing who shows up, how many people show up. Very excited to report back. I am also excited to continue putting out more content, as well as designs. I have a lot of ideas floating around for, pre-orders of patches, of shirts, and even some sort of nylon ideas too I have written out that I need to play around with. I'm still sort of finding my footing in the apparel space. I'd imagine finding suppliers and contacts in the nylon space would be a little bit more difficult. So crawling, walking, then running, but again, have a lot of things floating around in my head and very much excited to bring them and put them out into the internet in 2024. Also looking forward to watching another shit show election unfold, especially with the Epstein docs released and being released. I think January 22nd is the next date for the release of more documents. I believe there was a redacted name who is still alive who had asked for a delay in his name being released. So there's going to be another document dump on the 22nd of January, is my understanding. The names in the black book so far, which have been released, are shocking to say the least. However, the black book, as a reminder, isn't enough to incriminate somebody. These could just be literally everyday contacts in his life, banker, probably complicit, but you get it, you know. The fact that their contact information is in the black book does not mean that those people actually partook in the unsavory activities that we are also interested in blaming these people for. That being said, some of the court transcripts and documents that are being released are implicating some very large names and some very interesting, obviously completely immoral, but also some interesting events as well, like the Stephen Hawking bit. I'll put a screenshot up of this here. But apparently he liked watching nude midgets try to solve very complex equations on white or chalkboards that they couldn't quite reach. Apparently that's a level of satire that only the brilliant would understand. But that one was the more wild one. I'm sure there's plenty of other shit, and much more disgusting shit too, in those files. But I'm very excited to see, interested rather, to see the reaction to some very large and popular names being actually, confirmed of wrongdoing, and seeing how that's perceived in the public eye. I'm not sure if we're at the point, or maybe we're past the point of being able to objectively receive information and process it, then make a decision. I fear that as a country, we are at the point where you simply root for your side, you've made up your mind, nothing can change it. And that's very dangerous, and that's very unfortunate. But this may or may not be a confirmation of that. I am hoping people remember the names that are on this list that are, actually confirmed and found guilty of committing atrocities, and they act accordingly and they treat those people accordingly, because that is justice, that's true fairness. And yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that before I get a little too spicy here. Also looking forward to some more dissident behavior driven by displeasure for our government. Hopefully that leads to a little more decentralization or something like it. I've shouted out the French before. The Germans are now sort of standing by them. The farmers that are protesting with their heavy equipment, spraying manure on government buildings, pushing police vehicles around, that's some real badass shit. And something that I think we need to start taking note of over here, because the overreach is disgusting. We're giving farmland away to the CCP. Our government officials are putting up speed cameras or mandating that certain vehicles be electric by X date and be illegal to have gas vehicles, taking away gas stoves, all this other horse shit, and we're just sort of letting it get shoved down our throats. And protests and demonstrations do work. We've seen them work. It is why police presence has dropped so much in certain large cities, and why crime has skyrocketed in them, and also why certain cities that have asked for decreased police funding are now asking for more police because they cannot control and stop crime. I've called out the New York subway. I've called out Chicago. I've called out California. Though those three places haven't themselves asked for more police presence because they are too ashamed to admit defeat. Although I'm pretty sure California is now going to allow undocumented or illegal immigrants to be policed, so maybe that's their backwards way of admitting that they were wrong and we do indeed need police there. But they're failed states because they bowed down to morons with zero experience in anything other than a classroom at most, where they learned absolutely nothing as it relates to transferable skills or skills that add or contribute anything to the economy or to the world in general as well, not even putting a dollar value on their skills or their worth. But you get the point I'm trying to make. So hopefully looking forward to more dissident behavior. Maybe we're going to start smashing some speed cameras, who knows? But we saw a lot last year with the Brace ruling. A lot of, people just sharing put a stock on it sentiment. A lot of people not registering their braces before the Supreme Court slapped it down. That gave me a lot of hope. I hope to see a lot more of that. Hope to see that expanding in the virtuous way, obviously. The line is a human line, therefore it's going to be a little bit blurry, a little bit gray, but virtuously going about dissidence is always good, always fun. And again, the French and the Germans are a great example of that. New generation of the sub 2000 and the yeet cannons. The turf wars will continue. I would love to get my hands on the previous and the new generation of said pieces because why not? Absolutely hilarious. I have only held the first generation or the last generation of yeet cannon in 380. I'd love to get a new one next to an old one, and same for the sub 2000. I've never held a sub 2K. I've only seen the reviews, and both I know are tremendous pieces of shit. But because they sell, the companies that make them will continue to innovate. And from a sit back and watch and a content perspective, how lucky are we for that? And hopefully looking forward to some more buybacks to crash. I think the presence of buybacks is discouraging, but the fact that we have the right to go and crash them and keep guns in the street, or in the hands rather, not the street, that sounded very bad, in the hands rather of responsible owners is always cool and fun and should be done. So looking forward to doing that. We'll get the FAG back out there to more events. On the not so looking forward to side of things, I guess, for 2024, T-Mobile. This came out a while ago to very little fanfare. T-Mobile announced the SHAFT, S-H-A-F-T, which is an acronym that stands for unsavory behavior in the eyes of T-Mobile. F in that acronym stands for firearms. And T-Mobile basically said if communications over text, or I believe it's just text, are found to include sort of this unsavory list of sort of contents, they will fine you or kick you off the network. And to anybody who has a couple brain cells and who knows how large corporations work, how they want to be the arbiters of morality in the name of shareholder gains and monetary gains, they will completely pillage your natural rights and make sure that you can only talk about dancing teens and other bullshit that you see on TikTok and Instagram, or else you lose your phone privileges. Now, to me, this is 100,000 times worse than the Bud Light incident, and I would have much liked to see people shooting up their T-Mobile phones instead of beer cans. Obviously, that would never happen. We're too glued to our phones. But also some clarification came out that the changes, the monitoring, the censoring, and the fining would be limited only to companies that use sort of the mass texting, features, if you will. So if you're on like a mailing list or someone gets your number and they sort of send out a text in mass, so like those political messages that you get so much that no one's done fuck all about. If those type of messages end up containing certain things that T-Mobile deems not even illegal, they don't have to like it. They specifically said there's different tiers to the fines. Illegal activity, resulting in a fine and a ban. Stuff like firearms, even though they're not illegal, would result in just like a $500 fine, but no ban, which is crazy. Because I also get I'm signed up on mailing lists for certain websites that have deals and announcements when things come back in stock. So does that mean that those companies will have to stop that feature because of this? I'm just not sure. I find those very useful. Nothing's illegal about that, but since T-Mobile decided guns are bad, they're going to start fining them maybe, so expect that to stop, maybe. And people will say, oh, it's just, the company, it's not the individual user. Well, need I remind you, will simply act as a stepping stone for this sort of enforcement of this sort of program onto consumers. Maybe or maybe not the fines are less or the punishments are less, but who gives a fuck? They have no right to do this. Nobody voted on this, mind you. And at the end of the day, the messages that you would be receiving from what you would think to be, I think we're above this, but the general public isn't above thinking that large companies are indeed, smart enough to make decisions for us and they can be trusted. people will trust these messages, with all their heart because it's coming from, a big company, without really understanding that all this communication is passing through, a filter or a jury, if you will, that is incredibly biased. And we know they're incredibly biased from public statements they've made, from tweets they've made, from their funding dollars. All these companies are incredibly biased. T-Mobile is no different. To have all communication over the airwaves if you are on said phone plan. Don't think T-Mobile is going to be the only one to do this. Other people will absolutely do this, should there be some sort of monetary gain through, stock or whatever the fuck it is. To have all communication over the airwaves pass through that jury, pass through that incredibly biased filter, is just freedom of speech death. Forget it. It would be a blow that we may not be able to recover from. And so I would love to see that dissident behavior I talked so much about earlier spill over into this. And, cancel culture, stop giving a fuck, really. I mean, you can give a fuck, but, not as much about the Bud Light thing. It was stupid. I understand it. I really wasn't for their decision either. So I was all for the backlash. But the amount that received versus, other things, not really congruent. So, sure, Bud Light applied to a lot of people. T-Mobile, this is going to apply to a lot of people as well. I remember Sprint merged with T-Mobile, and now SpaceX is launching satellites to support T-Mobile sort of phone coverage and network, starting only with text. So something to keep in mind, something to keep an eye out for, and watch for other possible providers offering this or saying that they will offer this sort of thing. The immigration crisis. Something you hear a lot about. The phrase military-aged male gets thrown around a lot. And actually, I was fortunate enough to have a very good conversation with an individual today who lives on the other side of the world, whose country is also experiencing a similar thing, but mind you, on a much smaller scale, because they are a smaller country with a smaller footprint than us, but their culture is gone. It's been erased by a lot of these loose immigration policies that let a lot of people into their country who had no interest in assimilating, and simply outbred and strong-armed that country into basically whatever prior country or culture these people were from. Crime goes up. It's an absolute mess. And so we went back and forth on a lot of things today, but I don't know where the immigration crisis here really leads. Again, it's over 10,000 a day that cross that southern border. The federal government is trying to make it illegal for states to protect their own borders. It costs over $390 million to support these illegal immigrants with all of the programs they're trying to provide to them, versus the $15 million it would cost to shut down, close, and secure the border. So I don't know why, I don't know where it leads. I just don't think it is good to the extent to which it is bad. I don't know either. There's no shock, there's no surprise that all of this is unfolding before an election year, like I said earlier. I have no doubt we're probably going to see some more disease maybe come out of this. I mean, California already implemented a mask mandate in medical settings on December 30th. Again, it's an election year, so any reason to lock down, any reason to cause fear or divide, they're going to push that. Very curious to see what that is as well, because you look at who's running, I think they're all, I mean, it's been no different like every other year before, but this year, everyone's unimpressive. Everyone's sort of bought or sold or corrupt, and I really think people don't give a fuck as much as they have in other years regarding who they actually end up voting for. I could be wrong. I could be out of touch since I've sort of given up on that whole endeavor. Immigration. Talked about Bud Light yet in relation to the T-Mobile thing. Harvard's gay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to miss out on some more incredible headlines. The first African-American woman, I believe, or maybe African-American, I don't really give a shit, because it doesn't matter what your race or gender is. You should just be the smartest and the most qualified to lead an academic institution. But she stepped down after lots of pressure. And by pressure, I mean a lot of donors pulling their funds from the organization, leading to her tenure as the shortest in all of history. So I think that's only fitting, since she was clearly a first that was put in there for headlines and feel-gooders. And that just speaks to money talks. Harvard's the latest example. Bud Light was the one before that. you saw their ads completely change and start showing back up in football games of good old Americans, a lot of white dudes, They corrected course very quickly. Money will always sort of do the walking. And so remember that, we talk about the people on the Epstein list. We talk about Bud Light, T-Mobile, and Harvard now. Money will always talk. And while we aren't the general funders of our politicians because they have massive corporations to do that for them, we may be able to damage the corporations that sort of funnel money to the unsavory politicians, i.e. all of them. And I know it's not going to be possible by tomorrow or even by this year to fully unplug from all of those wicked, evil corporations or even some of the smaller ones because of how central they are to our everyday lives and the comfort and the peace and just sort of the infrastructure they provide in our day-to-day. But just keep that in mind, that's sort of the highway, the funnel of funds. You pay these large corporations pay the government. Regardless of whatever side you vote for, they all suck. Again, my 2 cents, but I will typically stay away from buying from certain institutions, renting from certain institutions if I know that maybe their company is a well-known one to be a bad actor, I guess, if you will. Again, that's no different than the Bud Light thing. People switched over to Modelo. I don't know if Modelo or their parent company has sent funds to an unsavory party or supported unsavory things, but that's just one example of how that acts. I don't know how the T-Mobile thing works. I'm about to look into different providers. I think they're all pretty shitty. I would love to see some serious backlash against Meta, though. New year, so they woke up and just started shadow banning people again, which obviously fitting because the mob pre-order shirts will arrive this Saturday. So I'm going to be packaging those and getting those out the door. They're going to arrive hopefully a week early here. It looks like 10 days early, actually, which is super cool. But Meta basically woke up New Year's Day and said, fuck all these people up. I had 4 posts flagged with firearms in them, yes, but they weren't being used in an aggressive or a violent manner. All of them very healthy, actually, promoting healthy lifestyles, community, mental health, talking to others, keeping yourself in shape, and whatnot. And of course, because of that, my account could no longer be showed to non-followers. And I'm not alone in that. A lot of other people got hit with that. There's actually an account, I'll see if I can grab the screenshot. His name is Tactical Waffles, somewhat of a meme account, which we all do follow, They're hilarious, they're fun for the culture. He posted a couple pictures of him in full kit, sitting in like a shopping cart out front of like a store with a Nerf gun. And that got flagged as violating the weapons policy. It is indeed a Nerf gun. It's not an AR or, a sub gun painted like a Nerf gun. It is through and through a Nerf gun. And that got flagged. And again, if I go back to my episode on censorship here, this isn't about keeping anybody safe. They don't give a fuck about that. This is about money on their end, and it's about killing the culture. It's that simple. Canada did this when they banned airsoft and even replica guns that look like real guns. Like you can't walk into like an Army Navy store where you buy one of those old like wooden and metal things with like the little like flip back hammer things and pull the trigger because they look like a real gun. And when asked why that was included in the bill, some bitch over there basically said to kill the culture. It's not about keeping anybody safe. It's not about anything else other than bottom line for Meta so that they can keep ushering in advertisers. That's why everyone left, or some, not everyone, just some of the big boys left X. And it's about ideology and killing the fucking culture. Counterculture has never been cooler than it is today, in my opinion. The punk culture has never been cooler in my mind. You have, heavy music, you got skateboarding, and you got guns, gear, kit, militia type shit, and dissidents. I think to be a part of the counterculture here is incredibly cool. And being a part of the mainstream, whatever the ideological fucking wave is now, could not be more of, a turnoff or an unappealing sort of course in my mind. I think punk is back. It goes hand in hand with sort of the anarchist, the freedom and the gun movement here. And I think that is extremely fucking cool. And hopefully that continues to grow in 2024 here. And that was sort of a thought I sort of started to gain towards, the second half of last year, started thinking, man, this shit is really fucking cool. A lot of people, music, politicians, everything is starting to fly in the face, or start to really suppress and crush down a lot of the things that make us strong and healthy and smart. And so what a side of history to be on, and as far as Jesus, me talking, take two, what an exciting time in history to be a part of, sort of like grassroots beginning part of this revolution, in the sense that it is ideological at this point. It's not physical, and I hope it never does get physical. Let me be very, very clear. Peer-to-peer conflict, civil war, anything like such is simply horror beyond comprehension. And you will likely just die from starvation, most likely, or freezing to death. Now, it's obviously very cold where I am now. I realized that yesterday walking to my car first thing in the morning, going, holy fuck, if everything went black like right now, what would I have to do to survive? And we'd be roughing it. So that's something else we have to do in 2024, is get sort of my cold weather and just survival skills in general, a little more well-refined. So yeah, anarchy, punk, guns, all that cool stuff. Very cool time to sort of be a part of it, and watch that sort of develop, I think, and grow and evolve in 2024. Because again, it's going to be an election year. It's going to be very, very interesting. I don't necessarily believe all of the calls that 2024 is going to be this huge explosion, this huge craziness. 2020, 2021, 2022 even, that was nuts. That was insane. I don't know if we get to that point or worse than that, honestly. But even yesterday, I went to the grocery store. It was just a normal Wednesday. Nothing crazy, nothing going on, no snowstorm, no nothing, just a normal Wednesday, the 3rd of January, and the shelves were empty. I've never stepped foot in this grocery store and seen the shelves so empty, to the point where I got to the register after only finding half the things I needed and was like, hey, is there like some fucking natural disaster I'm not aware of that's going on? Like, what's up? To the cashier's like, I don't know, man. Like, it wasn't this busy before the holidays. And my only guess could have been like, people just didn't go shopping through, the holidays. So now they have to sort of catch up, buy a bunch. But still, that's extremely concerning, given that there isn't an emergency or anything crazy going on that would limit the supply of things on the shelves or really, really, really spike demand. So that's awesome. The local grocery store that I usually go to cannot keep its shelves stocked on a normal Wednesday. And now that really makes you think, what will happen if something really does happen? How fucked you will be. Because again, I found like half the things I needed to make it through the week. I would imagine that if anything does go to shit, none of the things I would really need would be on the shelves for, who knows how long. So something to keep in mind as well. But not to be all doom and gloom here. I've been going for, it's only going to be a short episode, a little less than half an hour here. So I'll probably try to keep it within 30 minutes. This is just supposed to be an episode to usher in the new year. Have a lot of fun things slated to be recorded with some new people. Some returning guests this year, so again, looking forward to doing that. One thing that came up today that I'm expecting a call back here soon is there is a CQB league that we found at one of the ranges here about an hour away from me. They meet once a week for 4 weeks, and there's a beginner and an advanced league. And essentially, this place has a 2-story shoot house. You pay $180. And for your 4 sessions, for those 4 weeks, they're covered for $180. They provide the simunitions, they provide the weapons. There is, from what I understand, an educational aspect to it, which is really the main draw for me, because me and many of the guys in the group chat have little to no CQB experience. So that would be a huge driver to go in, learn something, and put it into practice in like a competitive setting to really sort of drive making you better. So hopefully we can get a Full Metal Cast or, FM Michigan, like CQB League. I think that would be super, super cool. And then another thing to post, create designs about, and all that stuff. So stuff like that I find very, very cool, very, very fun. That helps build community and skill at the same time. And so I highly encourage you looking into things like that in your local area. We have some around the state that I'm in. A lot of it is sort of airsofty around here as well. But if you're someone like me who wants to get into that stuff but knows it's going to really take a class to put it into action and learn from really reputable people. You know, there's plenty of reputable people on YouTube, and I highly suggest if that does interest you to go watch them, take notes, dry fire with that stuff, try to put it into practice as best you can. But until you're in like a competitive setting and can really put it into action with like an instructor and people who can give you feedback in the moment, I'm not sure how valuable it really is. There are some classes coming up in the state this year, but they're fairly expensive, I will say, and I am anticipating my expenses to be a little higher this year with Pew Peeps, with other trips I have to take, with other things I'm planning for the channel. So I've had to bow out of some of the classes I would normally take. If you remember, I traveled to Texas this year, or last year, 2023, for the Orion Training Group Carbine class. They'll be back here in my state for a CQB class, which I would love to take, but again, it's a little too expensive. So saving my money, can't really swing it this year. So hopefully the CQB League helps scratch an itch and, you know, helps keep some of the boys together and keeps us getting better. I would like to commit to, should we go into this thing, graduating from the beginner class to the advanced class by the end of the year, we'll just say. I'm not sure the frequency that these leagues go on. I think January is the first instance. I think April's the next. So I'm not sure if I can commit to a graduation from advanced, from beginner to advanced before the half point of the year. But I guess you can call that a resolution in and of itself, even though I just called them extremely stupid. The boys will graduate from the beginner CQB League to the advanced CQB League before the end of 2024. And again, because gun culture is always changing, because trolls and, you know, opinions do shift with attitudes and current events and the evolution of gear and kit and whatnot. CQB is not the end-all be-all. Of course not. You know, your average infantryman, Marines sort of survival training is going to be much more valuable in the real world than CQB. Surviving out in the woods, purifying water, creating a fire, stuff like that, obviously is a much more real-world application than CQB. I absolutely understand that, and I acknowledge that. However, as someone who lives in urban areas right now and is looking to buy a house, CQB is something that would serve me well in a home defense setting. So by going into CQB and encouraging others to go into CQB, I am not discouraging or devaluing or taking away from the fact that your normal, you know, survival skills or long-range shooting or anything else outside of CQB is less important or should be ignored. Have to say that I know how the community works, totally fine how you guys work. Criticism is what helps us grow and helps everyone strive to be better. So covering my bases there, I think I'm all set. And so with that, stay safe, stay healthy, stay disciplined this 2024, and just keep an eye out. You know, see what's happening in the news and the media in your own backyard, in your own country, and act accordingly. Know and remember those names of those people who act in opposition of your morals and in your beliefs, and who actively deploy bodies or their money to dismantling the structures and the systems and the beliefs that you hold. Ideally, if you're listening to this, you understand, your beliefs rather are in line with the respect and sort of nurturing of natural rights, yours and everyone else who also respects, you know, natural God-given rights, because that will always end up being the right side of history, no matter how far back you go, no matter who you look to. That is just basic morality. You don't need religion. You certainly don't need government to do that. So with that, happy 2024. I will talk to you guys next week. Thank you.